All right, who's hungry? It's time to make our quilt sandwich. So your quilt sandwich consists of three things: your quilt top, your batting, and your backing. So what I love to do before I spray baste, I secure my backing to my surface. So my cutting mat or your table, whichever you prefer. And I like to use masking tape. So you're just going to secure it. This will help keep everything nice and smooth when you go to use the spray baste. So what I do is just push it down, give it a little tug, do that one again. This will keep everything nice and flat and tight, so that way you don't get any wrinkles when you go to quilt. Okay, we'll do our sides. Okay, so see, it's nice and smooth. There's no bubbles or wrinkles. Okay, so now we're going to bring our batting, and our quilt top over to our backing. And in the pattern, I provided the instructions, the cutting instructions for your backing and your batting, so that's pretty good for you. And then what I like to do is fold everything in half, use my spray baste. And you want to make sure when you're using spray baste that you don't spray super close, because you'll get overspray, and trust me, it's a hot mess to get out. So you're going to probably hold it about 6 to 8 inches above. And you just give it a little generous spray. And then you smooth out your batting, making sure if there's any threads attached that you get rid of those, because you can see those in your light fabric areas. Use your snips to cut some out. Last thing you want to do is work so hard and then all of a sudden there's a thread in one of your light background fabrics. Okay? And then repeat for the other side. Give us a nice generous spray. Again, 6 to 8 inches above your project so you're not getting overspray. And then you want to start from the middle, making sure everything's nice and smooth. And if you need to, you can adjust a little bit. Removing any loose threads. And then you're going to repeat this for your quilt top. Fold the quilt top back in half. Let's just check our thread situation one more time. We look pretty good. Give it a generous spray. And then we're going to gently roll back our quilt top, pressing from the middle out. And you want to make sure that you don't stretch the fabric, so that way your quilt top will be really straight. I like to go in every little nook and cranny of my blocks so that it gets it nice and secure. Okay. Same thing for the other side. We're going to fold it back in half, do a check for threads. There's one hanging out here in the middle. Okay, let's get this little guy too. And if you send your quilts out to be professionally long-armed, make sure that you remove the threads as well. Okay. Give this a generous spray. Put the lid back on. We don't need that guy anymore. And then fold your quilt top back. Okay. Yeehaw, look at that. Nice and smooth and flat. No bumps or bubbles. Getting all the nooks and crannies. Your perfectly pieced points. All right, so now we're going to remove the masking tape. And this is fun. You can get someone to help you with this. Just going to pull it all off here. Make a nice masking tape ball. Okay. So now that we have everything layered together, our sandwich is made, we're ready to start quilting, and we're gonna machine quilt today. Now, I keep my machine quilting pretty simple, straight lines. I don't really do much free motion quilting. Kind of nervous about doing that. Maybe one day I'll try it. But what I wanna show you today is how to do quilting on the diagonal. So normally I would just go from, left to right, straight lines. But for this quilt, I felt like it might be nice to do it on the diagonal. So what you're gonna do is take your quilting ruler and you're gonna go from one corner to the other, and notice my ruler's not long enough, and that's totally okay. So you're just gonna place it, make sure you hit where your sashing meets up, and that way you'll know you're in line. Then you're gonna use your masking tape again, and you're gonna get yourself a nice little, maybe a foot, foot and a half section of masking tape. And you're gonna place it off of the quilt top onto the batting. And you're just gonna use the edge of your ruler and line it up. Give it a nice little press with your finger. Yep, everything still looks nice and lined up. And then you're gonna move your ruler to the other corner, lining it up with where you taped it the first time. Everything looks pretty good. Tear yourself some more tape. Go off the quilt top onto the batting. Line it up with the edge of the ruler. Finger press it down. So there's your first quilting line. And what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna use the edge of the masking tape as our guide with our presser foot on our machine. And that will give you a really nice, crisp, straight line. You could also do this with a fabric marker. Fabric markers are a little tricky in my opinion because sometimes they reappear in different temperatures, especially if they're an iron. You could use a washable one. There's some really great ones on the market. So now you get to determine what spacing you want between your quilting lines. And again, we're just gonna use our ruler. I typically go about 2.5 inches. Again, it just depends on how big the project is. And I think for this one, we're gonna go 2 inches. So you're just using the 2-inch mark on your ruler to line it up with the edge of your tape. Okay, that looks really good. And then I like to just press on my quilting ruler, and that will help secure that first tape line even more. You just want to make sure you didn't get it. Okay, there we go. Tear yourself some tape. Line it up with the edge of your ruler, going off the quilt top onto the batting. Finger press it down. Okay, and keep going. Line it up with both edges, so the 2-inch mark and the edge of this masking tape line. That looks pretty good. Tear yourself some more tape. Again, going off of the quilt top onto the batting, and you're just lining it up from the ruler to the existing tape line. So now you can see where your tape lines are gonna, or where your stitch lines are gonna be for your quilting. A little off there, but that's okay. And then we're just gonna repeat for the rest of the quilt. All right. So as you can see here, we have all of our quilting lines ready to go. And again, you're just gonna follow the edge of the masking tape with the edge of your presser, or your presser foot for your machine. And we'll take it over here. And I have switched out my machine to my walking foot. I've switched out the needle, and I've also increased my length of the stitches on my machine to a 4.0. Anything between a 3.5 to Maybe even a 4.5 is great for quilting. Anything above that would probably be more like a basting stitch. I generally keep mine at a 3.5 or 4.0. And you can quilt with whichever color you want. If you want to keep using the piecing color you use, that's totally fine. It's up to you. Now, what I usually do is start somewhere in the center to quilt. And again, you're just going to use the edge of the presser foot on your walking foot to start your quilting. And you're just going to follow that, and that's going to be your straight line. And the machine speed I have cut down a little bit because I feel like when you go super fast with your walking foot, you could mess up and your lines might not be as straight. So you're just going to follow your masking tape line, stopping and starting as you need to adjust to keep everything nice and flat and straight. Okay, keep adjusting so we're nice and flat. And then I will sew off of the quilt top in both directions, just to, when I go back to trim, I'm not trimming right on the last thread. Okay, so there you can see is our first quilt line. Pretty easy, huh? So we're going to put that back in and follow again. So this time we're going to follow this other line. So again, we're just using this edge of our walking foot to give us that nice straight line. Okay, and stopping and starting to adjust so that you keep everything nice and straight. So you see, this is a pretty great way to machine quilt using the masking tape. All you're going to do is keep following the masking tape to finish your quilting lines, and you're all set to go. All right, we're wrapping up here. We have 2 lines left. And you noticed I've rolled my quilt, so I just roll it as I sew the lines. That helps keep everything nice and organized under my machine. All right, last one. Again, still just using the edge of the tape. There we go. All right, now we're going to remove our masking tape and trim our sandwich. And I like to remove the masking tape starting in the center here and pull out. Okay. Last little bit here, that side, flip around. Okay, sort of therapeutic getting rid of this masking tape. Okay, a couple more here. Pull that guy off that way. All right, so now we're going to trim our quilt sandwich. And all you're going to do is take your ruler and your rotary cutter, get it nice and lined up along the edge of your quilt. Now, if you have a bigger quilt, you might have to use a couple of rulers or kind of, pull it as you go to trim it down. Okay, this side will actually look pretty square. That's nice. Yeah, if you use a lot of dense quilting in your projects, it will change the shape of your quilt and you'll lose some, inches on your quilt. It might not be that dramatic, but it will change the shape of your quilt a little bit. That's also why I like to keep my quilting a little simple. And another little trick that I like to do, especially with mini quilts, is you can use the lines on your cutting mat to see if you're pretty straight and squared up. This looks pretty good. And if you need to, you can go back in and trim some more to make it all nice and square. But I think we're pretty good. Got a little bit caught there. Okay. Okay, so now that you've done that, you've trimmed up your quilt, you're ready to go. We're gonna add our binding, and the measurements for your binding are in your pattern. Now you can use a couple of different methods. You can do hand binding or you can do machine binding. It's totally up to you. And you're all set to go.